Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio in Chicago, Illinois, it's time for Chicago Business Radio. Brought to you by FirmSpace, your private sanctuary for productivity and growth. To learn more, go to firmspace.com. Now, here's your host.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chicago Business Radio. I'm your host, Max Cantor, and before we get started, as always, today's show is sponsored by FirmSpace. Thanks to FirmSpace, because without them, we couldn't be sharing these important stories. We have a great guest for you today. She is the Talent Acquisition and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leader. So please welcome to the show, America Baez. Welcome to the show, America.
Thank you, Max. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to talk to you and learn a bit about yourself. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes. Well, I am a talent acquisition and diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, as well as a nonprofit leader. I am involved in different fields, but I have led diversity recruiting strategy and operations at Fortune 100 companies, and I've also led diverse organizations, especially a Hispanic organization called Prospanica, to better, Hispanic community in business.
Awesome. And so how did you find yourself in the field of HR and recruiting? What led you down this path?
Yes. Well, precisely when I got involved with this Hispanic organization, Prospanica, the mission was to provide career development opportunities, education opportunities for the members. And I became the Chicago chapter president, and eventually I was in the national board. So I was getting sponsors, talking to different companies, and also increasing or working on increasing the membership. And that led to my HR career when one of those corporate partners suggested me, considering HR and recruiting as my next move. And that's what I ended up doing it. And I loved it. It was a great fit. And this was many years ago. So that's when I made the switch.
So as, right now, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, how are you helping companies create these DEI groups and developing strategies to attract talent?
Yes. Well, definitely in the current environment, this with the social issues and racial issues going on, it was important before, but it became even more important now. And I work with the companies to assess their recruiting practices, their attraction talents, to make sure that their processes are fair, for everyone, and don't detract people from applying to jobs. Also, from a company perspective or an employer perspective, to position them as employer of choice in different communities, especially underrepresented communities, by building their brand. And most importantly, nowadays companies really need to commit to supporting diversity and inclusion, since this, is very important for many people out there, and that candidates are looking for those kind of companies that have a purpose and have a mission. So I work with them to establish processes and programs to attract talent and elevate the talent within their organizations.
Absolutely. And so while you've been working with these companies, what you're doing is so important. I'm sure as you've been working with them, you've encountered some challenges that the companies face in HR and recruiting. So what are some of these challenges that you've encountered, and how have you helped companies beat them?
Yes. Well, definitely. Again, I mentioned earlier the issues around racial injustice, that companies need to really be committed and they have to establish programs, internal and external programs to address those issues. And otherwise, they're not going to attract the talent that they want to attract. Mm-hmm. And so the company has to do kind of like do do their homework, do some legwork in order to position themselves as employers. And another issue is also that, with COVID or after COVID, things change in the workplace, and now more people really want to work from home, and they want to have more flexibility. And some companies weren't used to, having that kind of flexibility before, and so now they have to really think about it and put that in practice.
I'm glad you actually brought up COVID, because I have a question for you about networking and its importance in, building your relationships in a professional environment. With COVID, everyone's at home. You had to resort to doing it remotely. So can you talk a little bit about networking in person versus networking remotely?
Yes. Well, it has, I think that also had a silver lining, or COVID and networking. With COVID, before, there was social media, and a lot of people were leveraging that. But, with COVID, everything and everyone pivoted to virtual. So now folks have become more savvy about how to use social media, how to leverage social media and connect with folks out there. Also, the companies themselves or organizations and the people themselves, everyone is more receptive to connecting with people virtually, because that became kind of the norm. So it's something that, we or the person has to get comfortable with, and perhaps read articles or watch videos online about networking online and reaching out, and how to leverage platforms like LinkedIn. But once they do that, it's going to become easier, and people are more receptive again, because the things have really changed over the last couple of years.
Now, America, I've heard that you've been featured in a new book called Today's Inspired Leader Volume 4. So can you talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on leadership? Yes.
Well, I think that everybody, when I say this, it may sound like a cheesy line, but everybody is a leader. I think that we just need to kind of create or be more aware about ourselves and how we operate, how we lead, and really this could be leading at any level in their careers, regardless of what they do. Now, ideally, to continue learning and growing, we want to be able to identify these trends, to focus on our strengths as a person, as a professional, to continue developing in that area and lead in those areas, and also influence as people move from one career to the next, or one job to the next, or even with nonprofit organizations or in government. You are influencing and leading, and that's important.
America, you're doing so much good work for so many people. So this is a question I like to ask all my guests. What is the most rewarding part about what you do?
Yes. The most rewarding part is that I am lifting people up, that I am elevating, at least my purpose, my personal mission is to help people out and to elevate the people and the talent around me. So even the early days in my career, I felt that I was already doing this, and I continue to do it through the work that I do day in and day out, at different capacities or different positions throughout my career. Regardless of that, every moment, I feel that I am doing that, and that's the most rewarding thing, and it's the most meaningful thing for me.
That's great. That's so awesome to hear. And so if people want to learn more about you, or maybe want to learn more about the services that you provide and the work that you've been doing, what's the best way they can find out more about you, like a website or social media?
Yes, they can look up they can find me on my website, which is my name, americabaez.com. And I also have my profile there on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, America, it's been so great chatting with you. You're really doing some really great work, and we appreciate you. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Max.
And thank you for listening to another episode of Chicago Business Radio. I'm your host, Max Cantor, and we'll see you next time.
This episode of Chicago Business Radio has been brought to you by FirmSpace, your private sanctuary for productivity and growth. To learn more, go to firmspace.com.